Hey there everyone, and welcome to a video on guild raids. In this one I'm going to be going through the night, and I'm going to be going through all the different details, everything you might want to know. Now saying that, there may be a couple of things which I don't go into as much detail as I do in the Archer or Wizard video, so do go check them out if you want to know anything more. If anything feels unclear from this video, it may be answered there. So I'm going to be going into my note here for night, and we're going to go through everything in order. The little the structure I'm going to be doing for this video, because there's a lot to go through, I'm going to go through just the key points to begin with. And then I'm going to show the run, and then I'm going to go through some of the extra details after the run. Just, you know, for the people who aren't so interested in knowing everything, I'm going to get to the run as soon as possible. Sorry, excuse me. So first of all, we've got a few points here to go through. So in general, you want the skill cooldowns low. That's just because they, the skill levels, this is at 10 out of 99 rather than 99 out of 99. Because if you get them up to 99, the cooldowns increase. Use the skills less frequently. Now you can put forward the point that if you're still using the same number of skills, you know, if you're doing more damage per skill use, then you would be doing, you know, more damage over the course of the raid. However, in fact, the reality is, if you put your skills in a certain order, then it does use most of the skills. And in fact, by increasing their skill level and increasing the cooldown of them, then it just means that you lower the DPS of all the different skills. One in particular, Maim, a lot of people like to get this beyond 10 out of 99. However, it just lowers your damage per second in Guild Raid too much. So you generally want them 10 out of 99. The only skills which you should consider pushing beyond that are things like Cleave, which the cooldown is just super low if you have it 10 out of 99. It interrupts everything. You just have to put it at the back. Now, it actually does really good damage, so you don't really want to be using it. You do want it a bit more forwards. Anyway, basically, you can increase that a bit. Also, the other skills which go up to 15, you can increase those. However, on night, you can't really do that. So basically everything at 10 out of 99, apart from Cleave, which you push up a bit. The way you want to do it is with autoplay. That just does the most damage. It uses the skills way faster than you can. And in fact, it does certain things where it will, say you go to use two skills, it goes to use two skills in a row. The first one, it will break that animation and do the second one. So an example of this is, if we do, say, Volcano Eruption into Sunder. Now, doing this manually, you have to use one then the other. What it will do is it will use the first one, except it will then also use the second one, and it won't do the animation for the first skill. So, because of this, having skills in a certain order makes it much faster. So I will go into that afterwards, after the run, but basically this specific order is very, very good to do for, you know, just everything really. So I've gone into done a lot of analysis of this, and this is the perfect skill order I've found, basically to get the most skills out, the most damage output overall. In general, what you want to do when you order skills for autoplay is you want to put the high damage and a high cooldown skills, high damage per use and a high cooldown skills more towards the front. Because they get used less and stuff, they won't interrupt the skill flow so much. And then at the back you have the fast things like Cleave and Hurl, because they interrupt things a lot. You want to use them less. Also, you can have a little bit of mana trouble sometimes. I've got 1,600 mana. It's mainly because you use things like Sunder and Enrage at level 99 that just get a lot of mana used. So you can use Honeywine to keep your mana up. The other thing I want to talk about is the resistances. So if you don't know about resistances, go check out my Stats Explained guide on the forum. That goes through resistances in great detail. I'll be adding actually the guild raid information into there as well. But basically, what it does is it reduces certain stats, and the difference between normal gameplay and guild raid is that the caps are different. So normally you have like 80% chance on your crit chance as the maximum. Here it's 50%. And similarly, crit damage and attack speed, they're lower. This is like 8.5 times and 6 per second. So yeah, they're all a bit lower here. However, you still need to be the same amount above. So normally here, say the crit damage resistance was 1,800, you need to be 700 above, so 2,500, and then you'll have 8.5 times. It will be a sort of +7 on from the 1.5 times. Now here, even though the cap is lower, you still need that +700 in order to get the 6.5 times. It's not plus 500 instead. Now the extra addition as well for Guild Raid is a guild damage cap. Yeah, messing up my words. Sorry for that. There's also a damage cap. So anything beyond 20,000 damage in Silver Raid will make no difference. Now bear in mind, this is for this specific Guild Raid. If you are looking at this at a later date and there are later Guild Raids, the bosses will be tougher, the resistances will be higher, your damage cap will be higher. In the Gold Raid, you can see the resistances here. They're all a bit higher. The damage cap's at 30,000. And then for Platinum Raid, if I can find it, the damage cap's at 40,000, and here are the resistances. So that's the way resistances work. Once you know that, once you know the general stuff about how you're going to set up your character, that's the way to go. This is the skill setup. I've got a lot of skill points in this. Knights do use a lot, mainly because they're using these advanced skills as well, because they don't have that many damage skills. I say Knights, I'm talking about. So adding in Sunder and Sever helps out a lot with just increasing your damage output. So they both need to be 99. In Rage, this gives a damage buff. It's excellent to have 99. Spikes as well. You don't actually need that. Sorry, that's just for something else. So ignore that. You don't need that. But 57 is what I'd recommend, because then you get the 3-second cooldown here. And that just helps out with the skill flow a bit better. Gets a bit more damage per skill use. It just increases your damage per second. But all the rest to 10. And as you can see with the skill order here, so I have these 5 skills here. And then these 4 skills here. Now in general you want to go with water screw-ins. It depends on what build you're using, whether you're using fire, water, nature, whatever. But in general water's better because you've got this Lord of Winter screw-in that boosts water damage. And then also generally just the water screw-ins. I'm not going to go through them because they'll be different at a later date. But these screw-ins are kind of the best ones. Volcano Eruption here, this is a good damage skill. It has almost no interruption. But I'm going to go into that stuff later. So we're going to go in and do the run. I do like to run to a very specific location. It's mainly for help with dragons and stuff. Always pulls them in. So I just run forwards. You go slightly behind where the boss is and hit also play. Now you just sit back and watch. And it should get a reasonably good flow across the skills. The ones at the back won't be used quite so much. But it works out as best this way. This is just the best. You get the best damage output this way, with the skills in this certain order. Now, damage output, because you're using autoplay, and it really depends on how it flows through the skills, it varies a lot, the damage you get from each run. So, what I've got when I've got them listed, and I'll be showing them later, I show kind of the average, but the range is quite a bit larger than that. So you may find that from run to run you just get a huge variance in what you get. Especially if you're using like dragons as well, then it's going to mess with things a little bit. So anyway, that's got to the end of the run now. As you can see, it's just, hitting away, no risk of death, because you kill the ghost. So I got 826 million. This is against the Platinum Raid boss, and I will show you my elemental stats. I forgot to do that. But because stats are capped and stuff, your stats don't really matter. Once you hit the limit, then they make almost no difference. Well, they make no difference at all. The only stats which really make a difference are elemental stats. So here I've got 400% in fire, water, and nature. Those are the different kind of elements I'm using. Apart from Dark Sunder, this is Shadow, which I've only got 92% in Shadow. But anyway, that's everything there. So now I'm going to go into the more details. I'm actually going to compare that just quickly against. So I did Platinum Run. 400% in all things, 880 million. I can't remember what I got in that run there, but it was roughly that number. So that's kind of what's going on there. So now I'm going to go through some of the more detailed things. First of all, I'm going to go through the Knight's skill order. So this is something which I've kind of talked about a little bit so far. It's very, very specific. The reason why is, like I was saying before, that certain skills, when they use them, it will then sort of splice through the animation, and it'll do an animation for the next skill and use them both. Because of that, having them in a certain order is very, very helpful. Certain ones next to each other, as well as just generally the placement. So taking that into consideration, and also going for the high cooldown, high damage skills to begin with, and then the low cooldown, low damage skills later on, that's how I came up with this. I came up with this, I tested it, logged the numbers, and then I tried out practically everything else, and nothing else was as good. So it turns out I got it bang on first try. And yeah, believe me. So you can see some of the details here. I'm not going to talk through it all, but I was taking a look at how much interruption each skill does in terms of the animation length and before it then uses the next skill. Certain ones lead into other ones quite well. So you can see here, Sunder, I said, works well next to Maim. This is just something I found out, that Maim then Sunder was really good. Now, in terms of cleave or hurl, this is the main thing. So actually, a lot of these early skills, they don't interrupt that much. Whirl as well, it doesn't interrupt that much. Then you get to cleave and hurl. This is a really big problem because both of them have low cooldowns and both of them interrupt quite a lot. So in terms of which one you place first depends on your elemental stats. Mainly because Dancing Toxic, the hurl Skurun, is really powerful. So, but the other Skuruns aren't. That's just how it is right now. It may be different later on, but basically because that nature Skurun is really powerful and the other elements aren't, it depends on how high your nature is compared to the other elements. So this is the specific order I came up with. With cleave in front of hurl, it goes smoother with cleave in front of hurl. If you put hurl in front, it's slightly less smooth. However, for example, if you have both nature and water at the same point, the same stat, Dancing Toxic does double the damage that cleave does with, say, a water Skurun. So yeah, it does a lot, and there's a lot of benefit from having it in front because it does get used more. So that's how it works out. The hurl's better if you've got higher nature than water. With looking at the Skuruns that there are currently. Also, if you put hurl in front, it's less consistent with the damage. There's a larger range that you hit, simply because the flow is so bad that you barely use cleave. But then sometimes you use cleave a bit more, and then you get higher damage. You get more damage overall. So that's looking at the skill order. I hope that gave you all the information there. You could read through as well. So here we're going through Silver Raid, Gold Raid stuff. You can see I broke it down by skill. I tried all the different Skuruns as well. I didn't bother for things like Whirl because they're so similar in damage output. But you can see here, for example, I was saying about Dancing Toxic being powerful. You've got 18 million on Frozen Shield, 27 million on Lava Spread, and then 47 million on Dancing Toxic. That's just so much more than the other two. Like, the damage output there is crazy. Now this damage is basically over the course of the full raid, that's 45 seconds, if you're attacking with just this skill as frequently as possible. So things like cleave here, this is actually kind of higher than you'll get because it's not going to be used constantly. Like, you'd have to have that first, and then it would do this and almost no other skill to get this kind of damage. So this was pretty much just for me looking at originally to then see which skills are most important for damage output over the course of the duration. So don't look too much at the damage output here. They're just basically kind of throwaway numbers to compare against each other. What you mainly want to note on is resistances and stuff. This will vary to later raids as well. So now Gold Raid, I did some testing with different builds, different elemental builds. So you can see the numbers here for this stuff, but basically this is taking a look at the different builds of elemental stats. So this is if you have 180% in everything. This is, well, fire, water, nature, but that's all the different skills elements I'm using. So as you can see, you get some pretty decent damage there, but increasing your fire doesn't actually increase it by that much. Increasing by nature increases by more. You can see I switched some Skuruns to nature. And then water actually does the best. So water is the best build right now for getting the most damage output, mainly because of Lord of Winter, I feel. Lord of Winter just really helps out there. So yeah, that's the kind of damage output you can expect in Gold Raid with those elemental stats if you're using this best setup. And then we get to Platinum Raid. Again here, you can see the damage numbers. I'm not going to go through that, just press for time. But as you can see, those are the kind of damage output you can get if you switch these Skuruns and you have these different certain builds. And all the details are kind of listed here. Last thing to talk about is dragons and consumables. So consumables, I couldn't really get any benefit from them. I don't know why, but it basically didn't boost my damage at all. Dragons, most of them give about 50 million extra damage. They don't do actually that much compared to what you can do. Already in Ancestral though, because they Celestial. Because they boost your damage output, you can get a lot more benefit from there. So that's everything I wanted to go through as concisely as possible. Thanks very much for watching.